Hello. Welcome back to more Higurashi. It's been a while. I'm gonna post my links. Okay, so last time, we did some bad shit. We went to school in Mion's place and beat up Satoko because we determined that she was a burden to her brother, who our character Shion is in love with. Even though Satoko is like 10 or 9. But you know, it's all good because Satoshi forgave us for some reason. Then he killed his aunt. Hello, Daisy. Then he killed his aunt, and then we covered for him with a fake alibi, but in so doing, revealed ourselves to be Shion Sonozaki, though we had been pretending to be Mion up until this point to evade the notice of Oryou, our grandmother. But now that we've blown our cover, we'll have to see what the consequences of that will be. Thanks for being patient with me and getting back to this. I was a little burned out. Honestly, this is not the best time for me to be doing another one of these, but I wanted to. It is a good day in that I'm all alone. Like, Josh isn't home. Fuck. But also, I'm supposed to be getting up early tomorrow. So maybe doing a stream late at night isn't great, but it won't be a super long one, I suppose. Anyway, let's continue. We got to the end of chapter 6. Okay, yeah. Sorry, for a second I'm like, I thought we'd usually do like 2 things per stream. So wouldn't that mean I've done 3 already? But no, I think the chapters for this one have been shorter than the recent ones. Anyway. Let's continue. The cops were smart enough to separate us during questioning. Oishi didn't come to talk to me. His aim was Satoshi-kun and nobody else. I got a young cop who just talked about ordinary things. He must have been trying to ease me into the interrogation. When I realized that, the clumsy way he spoke began to frustrate me. Is Satoshi-kun alright? I didn't think Oishi really bought my testimony. He must have been trying to get Satoshi-kun to confess in spite of that. All I could do was pray that he'd keep quiet. The phone on the desk rang, and the cop picked it up. This is Kumagai. What? Alright. I understand. Right away. He hung up and told me somebody had come to retrieve me. Looked like Satoshi-kun had to stay. Were they going to continue the interrogation just because he had nobody to pick him up? God, my throat. Fuck. Maybe I should make some, like, hot chocolate. Oh well, too late. Although, maybe I should have been worrying more about myself. The hag had probably heard about me by now since I revealed my real identity to the police. I couldn't hide any longer. I was going to receive some sort of punishment. I had no idea what she'd end up doing to me. The degree of punishment for a traitor is always severe in the world of the Sonozakis. The punishment must be carried out. If it's to protect the family's reputation, it's carried out no matter what. Maybe I should kiss my pinky finger while I still can. I asked the young cop just in case. Hey, did you know that in America, if a condemned criminal gets arrested in a state which has banned capital punishment, they'll refuse to surrender him to the state prosecuting if that state hasn't banned it? Let me read that again. I see. Huh? Maybe it was too difficult for him. He just looked puzzled. A glossy black car was waiting for me in front of the police station. A few men from my dad's office bowed to me. It's been a long time, Shion-san. Where's Kasai? Kasai had been helping me ever since my escape from the school. They wouldn't allow him to walk free. How's Sis doing? Does she have something to say about this? We were only told to bring you to the main house. Please ask her when you get there. After saying that, he escorted me into the car. A man sat on either side of me. Obviously, they didn't want me to escape. Thinking of Satoshi-kun, I looked back at the police station. Hold on tight, Satoshi-kun. I'll grin and bear it too. The car started off roughly. It was never a good occasion when I went to this house. Except when Mion and I were really small, oblivious of what the Sonozaki name meant for us. I'd been here only when I had to attend boring family councils. The car parked behind the house. Traders aren't allowed in through the main gate. I got out of the car. It looked like Sis would be the only person to receive me. I almost spoke to her casually, but her cold gaze froze me before I could. It's been a while, Shion. I never expected to see you other than on New Year's. It gave me the chills to hear her greet me in that cold manner. It's a pleasure to see you again, Mion-sama. I feel overjoyed to have the chance to see you other than on New Year's. I responded, trying to sound likewise. Our leader is deeply upset. I wonder how you'll explain yourself. I have nothing to explain. I had no excuse. I'd escaped from the school solely because I couldn't stand it there. That was all. Shion, come this way. Everyone is waiting for you. Mion escorted me, and the others followed. We went to the garden, not into the house. As we passed through the huge yard into the woods, I realized where she was taking me. When we were little, we were told never to go near these woods. I had a vague idea of what was in the back of them. I'd heard there was a hidden entrance to the underground torture room, where they used to punish the enemies of the family. The more hideous rumors I heard about the family, the more credible those rumors seemed. While I wasn't completely certain about any of that, I had never expected to see the torture room for myself. We came to a concave clearing in the middle of the woods. I saw a metal door at the bottom of it. The door reminded me of a bomb shelter. So this is the underground torture room, huh? I was surprised to hear my own voice. My voice was trembling. It made me realize that I was more scared than I thought. Nobody answered my question. The very air felt tense. According to the family rules, one of the twins must be eliminated. Was I finally going to be eliminated? Off to the dungeon with Shion. Yep. I realized I had been underestimating my punishment. I hadn't been aware of the real terror until now. I just thought I was. Beyond the steel door, the air had an intimidating smell. This really was happening to me. I shouldn't allow myself to give in to fear. I felt like saying something rude, but my lips were dry, and my fingers were fidgeting. I was escorted through the narrow hallway and down a few sets of stairs. There I saw another huge steel door. So this was the place. It was a spacious and utterly odd-looking room. The room had two sections that looked completely different. One side looked like a lounge. I saw several high-ranking members of the family council sitting on cushions there, looking expressionless. The other half was tiled, as if in a large public bath. That was already puzzling enough. And there were those things. To be honest, they had captured my attention from the moment I arrived. I noticed them even before I saw the lounge and the tiled space. I just didn't want to accept that they existed. I couldn't stand straight. I almost dropped to my knees, but I couldn't. Two young men had been holding me by the arms since I got here. There were oddly shaped things hanging from the wall. I was just refusing to recognize what they were. I knew exactly what they were called. I see. I understood that those eerily shaped objects were torture devices from hell. Damned fool! How dare you return? The hag sitting at the front of the lounge intimidated me in a horrid voice. She kept cursing me for a little while, but she was so incensed that I could barely tell what she was saying. I knew what she was trying to say, though. The hag was willing to forgive my escape from the school, but once I revealed my identity to the police, she had to step in. Since I had disobeyed the family rule, she, as the leader, was forced to punish me. Moreover, there was one thing that bothered her more than anything else, the fact that I covered for Satoshi-kun. The Hojo family had been seen as traitors to the village ever since the dam conflict. Satoshi-kun is still considered one of them. She couldn't accept that I was connected to him. To me, this was a bit unexpected. I had escaped from the school the hag had put me in. All the while, I believed that was what she was upset about. But in fact, she said that she was the most uncomfortable with my connection with Satoshi-kun. I couldn't believe this. Of course I knew that Satoshi-kun's family was persecuted for their betrayal, but I didn't think that Satoshi-kun was also burdened with that responsibility. He has nothing to do with that. I understand that his parents were ostracized, but he shouldn't be. Shut the hell up! The hag interrupted me with a shout, which made me cower in fear. She continued slandering the Hojos and said that Satoshi-kun was a cursed child. I started feeling pissed off. What did he do to deserve this? What was he being blamed for? It was too late when I realized I'd said that out loud. The hag looked furious. I'd obviously upset her. I decided to repeat myself to make it very clear how I felt. What are you saying, you old hag? Everything you've spouted is nonsense! Huh? Who the hell do you think you're talking to? Shut the fuck up! Let me finish! I shouted loudly to silence the hag. What the fuck do you know about Satoshi-kun? How could you talk about him like he's some pest when you don't know anything about him? I know how sweet he is! You don't like him because he's a Hojo? How fucking stupid is that? Is even your brain archaic or what? You hate the fact that a Sonozaki is with a Hojo that much? That's not just stupid, that's beyond stupid. Boy, I never expected to feel like Juliet. My voice became hoarse from shouting. My face was messy with tears. Even so, I didn't feel like putting a stop to my emotional explosion. I was all too aware that I was doing this just to overwhelm my fear. The hag was glaring at me while breathing heavily. I glared back at her as fiercely as I could. Eventually, I realized that her sticking point was my relationship with Satoshi-kun. She wasn't only upset that I had a mere connection with him. I see. Looks like Mion mentioned that, too. It was as though Mion was wearing a mask. She didn't budge under my penetrating glare. That was what the hag was really unhappy about. The fact that I was in love with Satoshi-kun. I don't give a shit about his family background or my own. Yeah, I'll admit that I'm in love with him. I love Satoshi Hojo-kun. I love him so much. Is that so wrong? Do you need a reason to love somebody? I could see the relatives shaking their heads in turmoil. Among them, I saw my mom. She must have been trying to protect me. But even she wouldn't look at me. Instead, she looked silently at the floor. Did you guys in the back hear me? Am I wrong? You'd know how sweet Satoshi-kun is in an instant if you bothered to get to know him. How can you put him down without... Mion held out a hand to silence me. Then she slowly walked in my direction. That is enough, Shion. I understand what you wanted to say. Mion put her head close to mine and whispered. Shion, I know how you feel. But you can't go back after coming this far. You have to pay for what you did. What did I do? Why me? That's ridiculous! Shion. Mion's face turned cold again, and she calmly told me. You're probably right, but this is Hinamizawa, and we are Sonozakis, as I'm sure you understand. We are the leaders of the three families. And you are the twin sister of the successor, Mion Sonozaki. Yet, I interrupted her. We haven't agreed on that matter ever since I came back. You're full of this reputation shit. Hinamizawa? The Sonozakis? So what? I don't give a fuck about... Listen! Mion interrupted me just like I did her. How many people did you depend on to start your new life in Okinomiya? Chills shot through my spine. Kasai-san is in a cell at the back. Why? Why Kasai? I knew why, of course. The moment I got caught, those who helped me were destined to meet the same fate. We were all subject to the punishment of betrayal. Maybe my punishment would be lighter than what they'd be going through. Kasai and Uncle Yoshiro must have been treated much worse than this. Everybody who helped me was falling victim. I know that you're prepared for your punishment. But have you ever thought of the consequences that Kasai-san and Uncle Yoshiro will have to face? My head rapidly cooled down. My aggression was all used up. I should be able to bear whatever punishment they bring on me. But I resented the fact that I'd be putting the people who supported me at risk. Shion. Apologize to Granny. If you do, the others won't have to suffer. Alright. But, Mion, did I really do something wrong? Was any of what I did that bad? The moment Mion learned that I wasn't willing to apologize, her expression turned cold again. She turned her back to me and returned to the lounge. I talked back to the hag in a really harsh manner. I told her that I didn't do anything wrong. Yet I had involved many people to whom I owed so much. It went without saying, this was my responsibility. I was the sole person to blame, and no fault lay with them. Yes, Kasai and Yoshiro-san were blameless, just as Satoshi-kun was. But then, as if she read my mind, Mion turned around and gave a slight nod. It was possible that something was going to happen to Satoshi-kun, on top of Kasai and Uncle Yoshiro. Wait, sis! That can't happen. Satoshi-kun, I mean, nobody else should be punished. Please forgive them. What is it, Shion? Tears rolled down my cheeks. I no longer cared about my pride. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. I should have said what the hag wanted to hear, yet she still looked unsatisfied. Maybe that wasn't too surprising. I had just denounced her so badly in front of the relatives. She wouldn't forgive me so easily. Just then, Mion spoke as the successor. So, Shion, how do you propose to pay for this? Pay? What do you want me to do? Nothing could be scarier than being told to pay up while standing next to horrid-looking torture devices. I was completely terrified. I couldn't move from trembling. Mion saw that and whispered to our grandmother. The hag nodded. Mion summoned some young minions and gave them an order. They removed one of the torture devices hanging on the wall, then set a table in front of me and put the device on top of it. What is this? It's a tool for removing fingernails. Do you know how to use it? No way! I shook as I stared at the tool. It looked like a giant nail clipper. You probably put the part that looks like a beak between your finger and fingernail, pulling them apart as if you squeeze the handle. The chills ran up and down my spine when I imagined that. Each fingernail represents one of your responsibilities. Shion Sonozaki. No matter which ones you choose, you must remove 3 nails yourself. 3. One for Kasai, one for Uncle Yoshiro, and the last for Satoshi-kun. It was a fairly reasonable number. Will you really not punish the others? Promise me. Please please let them go if I do this? This is a punishment, not a negotiation. If you don't like the procedure... I'll do it! Just give me a second. I'm doing it. I put the device to my little finger while shaking badly. If my fingernail were shorter, it would have been harder. The metal beak captured my little finger beautifully. The subordinates then stabilized my left hand with a different restraining tool. That seemed reasonable because my finger would slip out if it weren't restrained like that. As the subordinates buckled up the leather straps, I realized that this was really happening, and there was no escape. Somewhere in my mind, I'd been thinking that they might forgive me after the gesture alone. I shouldn't have been so naive. The emotions I'd been holding back appeared in the form of tears, and kept rolling down my cheeks. It was like my feelings were being squeezed out until the very last drip. Something even more horrifying followed this. It was the silence that awaited my next action. So, what should I do now? One of the subordinates pointed to the handle and told me to either squeeze it or hit it. He recommended that the latter would be easier, to make it quick. Nobody said anything after that. There was nothing to hear but the sound of my sweat dripping onto the floor. The onlookers were staring at me silently, waiting for me to execute my punishment. Both the hag and Mion, they were also anticipating it. I could refuse, but that meant I wouldn't be paying up. This punishment exists to offer payment in exchange for the safety of those who helped me. If I refused, they would suffer. I started breathing heavily. I knew that if I did this, the others would go free. This was, if you thought about it, quite a good deal. If it weren't me, it wouldn't be just 3 fingernails. If it were Kasai, he'd have to sacrifice his little finger, or something even worse. I knew that. It was my selfish desire to get away from that school. Why did Kasai have to suffer because of that? I knew that. Why did Uncle Yoshiro have to suffer just because he provided me with a job? I knew that the hag and the other relatives still hated the Hojos. So I didn't know what they'd do to Satoshi-kun if I didn't do this. Would they bring Satoshi-kun here and tell him to do the same? Would they tell him to remove his fingernails in exchange for forgiving me? He'd do it. He'd sacrifice himself with no hesitation in order to save others. My sweat dripped onto the table through my nose. I'd do it. Yes. It was only 3 fingernails. It might hurt a lot, but I wouldn't die. The fingernails would grow back. It wouldn't even leave a huge scar. I shouldn't be afraid. The punishment was minimal because it was me. If I refused to do this, the others would be punished much more severely. I couldn't let that happen to Kasai, Uncle Yoshiro, or Satoshi-kun. I was the only one who should be punished. So I just needed to bear the pain. I wasn't just breathing heavily anymore. I was also moaning faintly, ready to scream at any moment. That's right. Make it quick. This wasn't torture, so I didn't have to prolong the moment of pain. I should do it in one swift blow. That way my pain and fear would be minimized. I raised my right arm. It is pretty tame compared to the other punishments, but God, would that be painful. I raised my right arm. Quickly. The pain would be lessened if I did it in one stroke. It'd be much more painful if I messed it up. I held my breath. I felt as if my body was frozen. I was choking. The chills crept up my spine. Don't be afraid, Shion. Fingernails are just a tiny fraction of the whole body. Just 1 square centimeter. I could do this. I could bear it. Ah! I smacked my right hand onto the handle of the device. I sensed the noise through my body instead of through my ears. At the same time, I felt a pain I'd never experienced before. A moment later, the pain pulsated with my heartbeat. I clenched my teeth. I felt like my teeth were cracking. I tightly shut my eyes until my eyeballs got squeezed out. The pain wouldn't fade. Rather, it swelled with my blood pressure. It felt as though it was bloating like a balloon. Timidly, I opened my eyes. I found that my little finger wasn't really drenched in blood. It was bleeding, but not much. Certainly not enough to explain how much it hurt. My fingernail was open, just like the hood of a car. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was overwhelming. It occurred to me that I'd only done 1 out of 3. Did I have to repeat this 2 more times? Did I have to remove the nails from my ring and middle fingers as well? I looked at the hag and Mion begging for mercy, but they were just silently staring at me, as if the show had only just begun. I saw no hint of mercy in their eyes. They wouldn't be changing their minds. Since they said 3, it had to be 3. They wouldn't forgive me until I removed 2 more fingernails. Mion, look, isn't this enough? It really hurts, you know that? You see that in my eyes, don't you? It really hurts. Mion answered, still wearing a cold look. Shion, you can't keep going? She didn't mean that it was sufficient. What she meant is that the others would have to take the remaining punishment if I didn't. I knew that. I really did know. I'll do it! This is easy! You sadists! This doesn't scare me. This doesn't hurt. Ah! I quickly moved the metal beak and set it on my ring finger, and smacked it with no hesitation. Instead of making it quick, maybe I was just rushing out of fear. I'd messed up. The torture tool had clipped just the tip of my fingernail. The pain, however, was equal. I couldn't believe I'd only chipped it. Did I have to do it again? Did I have to continue removing the nail from my ring finger? That much pain? Again? Again? Shion. No! I don't want to do it! I couldn't bear it anymore. I started crying shamelessly. I can't do it anymore! It's too painful! Forgive me, please! I'm sorry, I apologize! I'm sorry! They didn't seem to hear my voice. It felt as though there was an invisible barrier between us. They showed no mercy. They were just here to witness this ritual. So rather than sympathetic, they looked amazed by my screw-up. Mion walked up to me and whispered to my crying face, Shion, there's just a bit more to go. Hang in there. No! I can't do this! It really hurts! It really does! Mion shook her head, then signaled the subordinates. They came from behind me. They covered my head with something like a knit cap. It was a blindfold. One of them pinned me in a Nelson hold, restricting my movement. No! Stop it! No! I couldn't overpower the guy behind me. Then I felt something strange on my left hand. The other guy was doing something with the torture tool. He put the metal beak between my ring finger and its fingernail. No! Mom! Help me! Mom! My left hand was fixed in the restraints, so I couldn't put up much protest anyway. But even that left hand was pressed down by his rough palms until it hurt, robbing it of the freedom even to tremble. They had no hesitation. It was made very clear to me how merciless people could be. Robbed of my vision, all I could do was clench my teeth against the pain assailing me. If there was anything I was thankful for, it was that he was well practiced and had ripped off both of my fingernails cleanly. pain and screaming might induce narcotic chemicals in the brain. While screaming, I started losing consciousness. I woke up. My memories were missing. I couldn't remember how I got back to my room. I held my head with both hands. My left hand was bandaged. The fingers that had their nails removed had swollen like hot dogs. I'd paid with those 3 fingernails for what I did. The hag had said something after the punishment, but I didn't remember any of it. I was taken to a hospital in Okinomiya. The car shook on the way, adding extra pain on top of what I already felt. Somebody gave me some aspirin. They worked just like they said on TV, but they didn't last more than 10 minutes. I swallowed the pills without water. While I was spacing out in the waiting lounge, Kasai showed up. He probably came to check if I was alright. I obviously wasn't. He must have understood that from my bandaged left arm dangling from my shoulder. Kasai, on the other hand, looked just fine. At least on the outside. I was relieved that my sacrifice had meant something. Kasai didn't say anything. I couldn't tell if he wanted to tell me something or not because he looked so emotionless. Kasai? Yes. He paused shortly before answering. I could tell he was upset. I didn't regret revealing my true identity in order to protect Satoshi-kun, but I hadn't wanted Kasai or Uncle Yoshiro to be hurt. I had been contradicting myself. Do you know how Uncle Yoshiro is doing? No. I'm sure he's alright, because he's strong. Even so, you should apologize to him. Okay. I wanted to ask him about Satoshi-kun, too. I wondered if he was captured or harassed by the Sonozaki family because of me. But I was hesitant to ask Kasai. After all, I'd chosen Satoshi-kun over them. Was Satoshi-kun alright? I hoped he wouldn't get caught or incarcerated somewhere. I paid the hospital bill, and Kasai gave me a ride home. I finally realized that somebody was knocking on my door. Shion-san, it's not healthy to sleep so much. It was Kasai. He put some side dishes on the table, and we started nibbling at them. How do you feel? Depressed. Have you been resting? Have you been eating? I've been eating the stuff left in the fridge. Otherwise, I've been either sleeping or staring at the ceiling. It'd been 3 days. I'd just been lying down since then. I woke up every now and then in my shallow sleep, but I didn't feel like getting up or thinking. I felt like I'd just been floating the whole time. My appetite was gone, but it came back with the smell of the food Kasai brought. I wasn't able to think of anything to talk to Kasai about, so I just ate silently. I got a call from Mion-san yesterday. She was saying she called you a few times, but never got through. The moment I heard Mion's name, I felt my wounds throb. But it didn't stop Kasai, who continued. Because you paid up, the family decided to close the matter. You will officially withdraw from the academy and transfer to a school in Okinomiya. They're finally acknowledging my right to make my own decisions, huh? Indeed. They said you could live as yourself now, under a few conditions. You will stay away from Hinamizawa. You won't pretend to be Mion Sonozaki. You won't show up in public places, and so on. This means, in exchange for acknowledging me, they don't want me to hang around. That's correct. Of course, it is only temporary, until things cool down. There is no set duration, but I think you should stay inconspicuous at least until the end of the year. It'd be good enough just to live in Okinomiya quietly, the way it was before. Kasai put on a sad smile. I smiled back at him likewise. Before the conversation ended, I should ask him what I wanted to know. How's Satoshi-kun doing? I wish that Kasai would assure me of his safety right away, but he didn't answer like that. Kasai, is he alright? Shion-san. Kasai put his chopsticks down. The family wants you to forget about him. What? Shion-san. I don't want to get in an argument with you, so I will not get into the details. I'm only relaying to you what the family wants. What are you talking about? What details, Kasai? Kasai pretended as though he didn't hear me and started eating again. I'd never seen him get so stubborn like this. The Sonozaki family had been using the Hojo family as a scapegoat. They must have concluded that a Sonozaki shouldn't be in love with a Hojo. I didn't like that. Satoko is a friend of Mion's at school. Would it be okay if Satoshi-kun and I were the same gender? Anyway, if I did something conspicuous again, they might do something to him for real. Just like they forced me to remove my own fingernails. The Sonozaki family wouldn't hesitate. They'd torture him if need be. Maybe, if I really loved him, I should stay away. Satoshi-kun won't show up in Okinomiya unless he rejoins the Hinamizawa fighters. I'd have to pretend to be Mion if I wanted to go to Hinamizawa, but I didn't think she'd cooperate with me. Even if she did, it'd be sometime down the road. Even if they told me not to see him, I already had no means of doing that again. Oh, wait. Mion gave me his number a little while ago. I could call him, and maybe ask to meet with him secretly. But if I got caught again, they wouldn't cut me any slack. Should I risk it? What the hell did I even want from Satoshi-kun? Kasai? Can I be alone for a moment? Kasai started putting away his food in a rush, assuming that I wanted him to leave. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. Take your time and finish your food. I just want to take a walk. You can't lock this place up if I don't step out with you. Kasai quickly put away his meal and followed me out. Just to be clear, I'm not going out to see Satoshi-kun, alright? I see. I turned around and started walking. My destination was rather pathetic. It was the toy store that sold that giant teddy bear. I couldn't deny that I was somewhat expecting Satoshi-kun to pass by there. I couldn't stop myself from looking at the faces of passers-by who resembled him. I looked into the store's window. The teddy bear was gone. Congrats, Satoshi-kun. Looks like you were able to buy it. His evil aunt had died, and his wicked uncle was living with his mistress. Satoshi-kun succeeded in fulfilling his duty as a big brother by buying his little sister that huge teddy bear. There was nobody left to hurt him. He was free from his tiresome efforts. He was completely free from pain. Over time, he'd retrieve his smile, and he'd go back to being the Satoshi-kun I love. But I wouldn't be there with him. I heard a car honking. I didn't think it was honking at me at first, but it was so persistent that I had to look up. The person waving at me from their car was Irie. He was waving at me all carefree, oblivious to my feelings. Sonozaki-san! Long time no see! Oh, are you meeting up with Hojo-san? No, I'm not. I know he looks into that store's windows all the time. So I assumed you were expecting him here or something. No, I'm just passing by. Looks like he was able to buy that teddy bear. Irie seemed to know about the teddy bear as well. He smiled upon seeing its empty display case. Yesterday was Satoko-chan's birthday. He must have celebrated it with that teddy bear. He doesn't have to work so hard anymore, huh? Indeed. Did he turn in his resignation to the Hinamizawa fighters. Oh, does that even exist? I never received one. Did you, Sonozaki-san? No, I didn't. So that means he still belongs to the team. I think he'll be back after things have settled down. But I know he'll be sad if he doesn't see you there. EDA teased me. He's a grown-up, after all. He must have been trying to sound optimistic because he knew I was feeling a bit down. You can come back to the team anytime you want. It might as well be empty without you. I'm thinking of providing you with a maid costume once you come back. I burst into laughter. EDA sure hadn't changed. Oh, I almost forgot. I can tell you my name now. Sorry, Coach, I was lying about my identity. I'm not Mion. I'm her twin sister, Shion. I've been pretending to be her for a few reasons. What? You're Mion-san's twin sister? He was totally taken aback. I burst into laughter again. Yes, I am Shion Sonozaki. I am forced to live quietly because my grandmother hates me, though. I never realized that Mion-san had a twin sister. Same here. Take a shot every time EDA makes a heavy comment. I don't drink. Suddenly, a loud voice interrupted us. The voice sounded mean and greasy, unlike EDA's. How does a voice sound greasy? It was him, Oishi. Hello, Dr. EDA. Thank you for your cooperation last night. Don't mention it. I wasn't of much help. You were just going through the motions. It was obvious that they hated each other. EDA whispered to me. I'm leaving now. Do you want to get in my car? I can drive you home. EDA figured that Oishi was after me, so he was giving me a chance to slip away. Looking at Oishi's face, it was clear that his focus was on me, not EDA. He probably intended to interrogate me until my testimony broke. I was sure I could talk my way out of it, but it'd just be a waste of time. Alright, Coach. Let's get going. Oh, are you two going somewhere together? Yes. We're on our way to get some stuff for the team. We have to drop by a few places, so will you excuse us? EDA bowed. I followed suit. I had to admire how good he was at lying. He's a grown-up, after all. Oishi seemed to know it was a lie, but he didn't have a warrant, so he couldn't stop us. I moved to get into EDA's car. How are your wounds, Shion Sonozaki-san? I gasped when I heard that. My left hand was bandaged. It was unsightly, so I kept it in my pocket. There was no way Oishi could have been able to see it. They'll heal with no problems if they don't get infected. I tore my fingernails off a couple of times myself when I was a kid. But look, they look beautiful now, don't they? Men's fingernails shouldn't look beautiful. That gives me the creeps. Oishi scratched his head and chuckled. He's supposed to be one of the best cops of the Okinomiya PD, and he knows about all the underground activities in the region. He must have heard about my payment from somewhere. Still, that happened in the secret basement of the Sonozaki main house. I couldn't underestimate this guy's sources. Thank you for your kind words. We'll be going now. Excuse us. Shion Sonozaki-san, why don't we get coffee together sometime? What? Are you hitting on me? If you like. Sorry. Time flies. I can't waste any of that precious time on things that don't interest me. You got me there. How about this then? You can leave any time if you get bored of talking to me. I won't stop you. How does that sound?
I don't mind you talking, but I won't talk back. I doubt you could call it a conversation.
Yes, that'd be fine. You can just listen, and I'll talk. You can just listen to an old man ramble while sipping on a cup of coffee. He was being strangely persistent. It didn't look like he was trying to poke a hole in my statement. What would he even talk about? I got a bit curious, even though I was still skeptical. Coach, I think I'll go with the old man instead. I mean, Shion-san? I winked at him and told him not to worry. Irie didn't insist. He got in his car and drove off. Oishi backed his car up so I could get in. I hopped in the back seat since I didn't want to sit next to him. Are you really going to a cafe? If you could direct me to one with no connection to your family, that'd be great. Why don't you just take me to the station then? Oishi carefully checked for oncoming traffic and then started driving. So he didn't merge without looking. Oishi took me to the police station, as I thought he might. If he'd taken me to a nice cafe, he would have scored some points. But whatever. I thought it'd be more convenient if we came here. You can still go home if you get bored.
Try your best not to bore me then. Do you want me to go into the station hand in hand with you?
Oishi chuckled and got out the car. He escorted me inside the station. I thought he'd take me to an interrogation room, but instead he took me to an office at the investigation division. Officers in both suits and uniforms were working at their desks, answering phones. There was a desk with a plate that said section manager, and nearby there were couches and a table. Oishi told me to sit on the couch and started making some instant coffee. I'd never been to this part of the police station. I looked around in curiosity. Did you think I'd take you to an interrogation room? Oishi brought over a tray with coffee cups on it.
You're treating me better than I expected. I thought you'd whip me or something.
My tastes don't run that way.
So? I thought you wanted to talk.
Alright, I'll cut to the chase. Are you in love with Satoshi Hojo-san?
What? It's getting boring already. I'm going home.
Okay, please forget that. Oishi must have known why I had to remove my fingernails. He wasn't trying to confirm that I liked Satoshi-kun. What he was really saying was that he knew already.
I already talked to Detective Kumagai about Satoshi-kun's alibi that day.
Of course, I read Kumagai-kun's report. I know you were with him.
I'll just repeat the same statement no matter how many times you ask. Don't think you can poke holes in it.
No, that's not what I want. You're a smart person. I know that wouldn't work for you.
I wonder what you're after. You're wasting your time if you want information on Satoshi-kun. There's nothing more to talk about. This is boring me after all. I'm going home, since that was our agreement. Excuse me.
I got up off the couch. Shion-san, I did want to get Satoshi-san's alibi from you. I admit it.
That's it then. It's boring. I'm going home.
I turned around and started walking. Oishi didn't get anxious, but instead spoke a little louder. But Shion-san, what I want to ask you about is his alibi for yesterday. Not the day of the murder.
His alibi for yesterday? Why? What does that have to do with his aunt's death?
It's because Satoshi-kun has been missing since then.
What?
Didn't you know that he went missing?
I couldn't say anything, but my expression answered Oishi's question anyway.
What's going on? Missing? What? Why don't you take a seat? What do you mean Satoshi-kun has gone missing? What the hell? We only know one thing for sure. He withdrew all of his savings at an ATM in the Okinomiya post office before 3 p.m. yesterday. We don't know his whereabouts after that. I knew why he withdrew that money. He wanted to buy Satoko's birthday present. Yes, he definitely bought that teddy bear yesterday. This is just my guess, but I think he skipped town with that money.
You mean he used the money to run away? That's stupid! He was saving to buy Satoko a birthday present. He bought a big expensive teddy bear from that toy store. He'd never use that money to skip town.
Yes, the most expensive teddy bear in that toy store was sold. But we can't confirm that it was Satoshi-kun who bought it.
Why don't you ask the clerk? Satoshi-kun and I reserved that teddy bear together.
Oh. I had a bad feeling. That old man who was watching that store was sleeping when we were there. He looked very senile. Maybe he was also watching that store on that day, and even though Satoshi-kun bought the teddy bear, he didn't remember him. Oishi put on a wry smile. It looked like he'd already tried to question that old man.
Anyway, it's Satoshi-kun who bought that teddy bear. He must have saved just enough to buy it, so he shouldn't have been able to run away after. That's nonsense!
Alright. Let's say he really did buy the teddy bear. Then why didn't he come home with it? At that point, I felt as though my heart had turned to ice. Satoshi-kun had been working hard to buy that teddy bear even though he was under extreme mental and physical stress. After all that, he finally managed to buy it. It's unthinkable that somebody else just showed up and bought the same teddy bear. The teddy bear was gone because Satoshi-kun bought it!
Nobody else!
But if so, Satoshi-kun should have given it to Satoko. But though he bought a present for her, he didn't come home.
He didn't come home? That wasn't possible! He would have gone straight home with that teddy bear. He wouldn't think of running away after buying the teddy bear. Even though Satoshi-kun wanted to run away from the police, he'd never leave without giving Satoko her present. Anyway, it must have been Satoshi-kun who bought that teddy bear. I can say that with 100% certainty. The question was, why didn't he bring it home? That teddy bear was huge. It wouldn't fit into the basket of a bicycle. He might have brought some straps to tie it to his bike. He wouldn't have thought of running away on a wobbly bicycle like that. He necessarily had to go home after buying the teddy bear from the store after withdrawing the money. Nothing could have happened while he was going between the ATM and the toy store. It was impossible! Nobody else could have possibly bought that teddy bear! Never! That teddy bear had been sitting in the showcase up until that day. Everybody could see it when they passed by. But nobody wanted it. It's impossible that it could have been somebody else. There should be no question that he went to the toy store after he withdrew the money. What about the route between the toy store and his home? There shouldn't be any question there either. He shouldn't have been able to do anything with that huge toy. He shouldn't even have thought of making a stop on the way. So he must have headed home right after he bought the teddy bear. But nobody saw him after that. It was simple then. Satoshi-kun went missing on his way home from the toy store. He went missing? What did that mean? I was sure he killed his aunt. He's not that shrewd. Maybe he couldn't bear the pressure from the police? Was he resigned to the idea that the police were going to arrest him soon, regardless of my help? Did he decide to run away? Did he think that he should disappear until things cooled down rather than get arrested? That was definitely, absolutely impossible! It was impossible that he came to that conclusion on his way home from the toy store. Even if he did, he would have waited until he gave Satoko her birthday present. Satoshi-kun loved Satoko. He shouldn't have spoiled her like that, but anyway, he always tried to be a good brother to her. So he'd never disappear before going home. I felt as though the ice was cutting through my heart, expanding the frost. If Satoshi-kun didn't disappear by his own will, the answer was simple. Satoshi-kun disappeared by somebody else's will. Was Satoshi-kun eliminated? It's really stupid, old man. I
thought I could shake off the frost in my heart if I laughed loudly enough. I kept laughing until it happened. I kept laughing and laughing. All the cops in the room stared at me. They thought I'd gone crazy. I didn't care what they thought. I kept laughing until it turned into a cough. I finished laughing and took a sip of lukewarm coffee. I felt as though the frost in my heart had spread all throughout my guts. I was chilled to the bone. I was freezing. My fingers shook as I held the coffee cup. Shion-san, please listen to me without interrupting. What I'm about to tell you is only a hypothesis. It's all just a theory. You might start laughing in the middle because it may sound ridiculous, but I want you to hear me out. Can you do that? Whatever. Just talk. I was feeling far too cold. My teeth were chattering. I felt as though my brain had frozen as well. I lost my ability to think. I couldn't do anything by myself. I could only do as Oishi told me. What he was going to tell me might be the worst possible theory, but I had to listen to it. I know that Satoshi-kun's and Satoko's-san's aunt was abusing them. Especially Satoko-san. In my opinion, it's normal that Satoshi-kun started thinking about murdering his aunt. Because he was just a human being. I had to deny that Satoshi-kun murdered her, but what Oishi was saying was true. I couldn't deny his hypothesis right away. I just kept silent. This is only a hypothesis, alright? Please don't be upset. And no interruptions. Agreed? I know. Just go on! Satoshi Hojo planned the murder of his aunt and executed it. We have no proof, okay? It's all theoretical. Alright! I heard! Just keep talking! I'll switch the subject now. Shion-san, you were forbidden from having a relationship with Satoshi-kun, weren't you? They told you to stay away from him, correct? I believe the reason behind that is not that your family hated the Hojos, but that they didn't like the fact that you were involved with a murder suspect. That is actually possible. After all, when I was pretending to be Mion, I already had a connection with Satoshi-kun, before anyone knew it was Shion who was spending time around him. I could have been accused when I was helping out the Hinamizawa fighters, if the relationship between the Hojos and the Sonozakis was the problem. It wouldn't be difficult for the Sonozaki family to know that Satoshi-kun murdered his aunt if it happened in Hinamizawa. Maybe one of them even saw the murder. The Sonozaki family didn't like that I was in love with a murderer. They decided to step in. Also, you're known to not give up easily, aren't you? Which means, even if the Sonozaki family threatened you or ripped off your nails, you still wouldn't cut ties with Satoshi-kun, would you? I couldn't deny that. I lost most of my means to access Hinamizawa, so my ties to Satoshi-kun were essentially cut, true. But I still knew Satoshi-kun's phone number, and I expected him to rejoin the Hinamizawa fighters eventually. I believe your family knew that a few threats would never be enough for you to break ties with Satoshi-kun. They could threaten you all they liked, to no avail. So, their only option would be to do something about the other person, wouldn't it? What do you mean, do something? What would they do? What? What? If threatening me was useless, then they'd do something about Satoshi-kun? What would they have done? If they pulled something, then wouldn't that interrupt his path from the toy store to home? Toy store to home! Toy store to X to home. What's X? What is X? X marks the spot where his path was interrupted. But what interrupted it? Why couldn't Satoshi-kun make it home from the toy store if something interrupted him? Why? 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 What's X? X! I ran out of air, became dizzy, and then collapsed. The floor felt cold. I felt no pain. I'd fallen to the floor like a plastic doll. Oishi and some others rushed over to me and helped me up. Calm down, Shion-san. We're not certain that Satoshi-kun was killed yet.
You're not certain he was killed? What the fuck are you talking about? Don't you know about that torture room where they forced me to rip off my fingernails? Don't you know that they say there are prison cells and a well for disposing of corpses in the back? If the Sonozaki family wants to eliminate somebody, they definitely kill them in that torture room and dump the body down there. You're not certain? Are you dumb? Is your brain made of tofu? If I were in the hag's position, I'd kill him for sure.
Hey, Playful.
I wouldn't let him get away. If I would kill him, then the hag would definitely kill him.
Shion-san, please calm down. This is unconfirmed, but I have information that somebody witnessed a young runaway male at Nagoya Station, who took a train from there to Tokyo. The clothes didn't match, but it is possible that he changed what he was wearing to hide from the police. It's still possible that it was him.
Is he alive? Is he?
This is also a theory, but let me go on. Your twin sister Mion-san is the closest person to Oryou Sonozaki, correct? I'm assuming that Mion-san stopped Oryou when she suggested murdering Satoshi-kun furtively.
Mion?
That was possible. She could have tried to calm things down out of pity for me. That idiot was always so indecisive. She should have been clear on if she wanted to save him or not. But she probably seemed vague about that. She must have persuaded the hag to reduce the punishment to banishment instead of death, just to avoid feeling guilty. I believe that the Sonozaki family contacted Satoshi-kun. They probably told him that they couldn't cover up the murder and told him to disappear somewhere far away. They forced him to be more accurate.
Satoshi-kun would have rejected that. He would never leave Satoko behind.
I agree with you. Satoshi-kun was working at the places Mion-san referred him to, wasn't he? So the family knew that he had enough money for a getaway.
But he'd never use it for anything other than buying that teddy bear.
You're right. He must have gone straight to the toy store after he withdrew the money. But what if the teddy bear was already sold when he got there? That would have been a very desolate situation. He'd been working hard. While his aunt abused him, he worked at many different jobs. The money was worth all that pain. He went to the toy store with that money in order to buy his beloved sister a present. That was the only purpose for that money. He must have looked for the teddy bear as he'd always done, but it was gone. He wouldn't have gone into a panic right away, because he was always so optimistic. He might have thought the store was wrapping the gift for him because he told them that he'd pick it up that day. He must have gone into the store joyously. I couldn't guess exactly what happened next. My heart would tear up if I tried to imagine it anyway. Why didn't they have it, even though he had it reserved? Did that old man understand the situation, or was he just zoning out? Maybe it would have been the same even if it wasn't that old man who was at the store at the time. If a bunch of fierce-looking subordinates from the Sonozaki family went in and showed them the money, nobody could have rejected it. Satoshi-kun must have sunk into silence. No matter how hard he complained, the teddy bear was gone. He probably never even considered that his dream might be taken away. He must have been wobbling his way home in sorrow, leaning on the telephone poles every now and then. It was the day he wanted Satoko to be happy the most. He couldn't get the present she wanted the most. He probably didn't think of getting another gift, because it was unimaginable that he couldn't get that teddy bear. He might have imagined how Satoko would react when she found out he had no present for her. He must have looked unbelievably sad and empty. The money he'd been saving meant nothing anymore. Satoshi never cried, even at his toughest moments. Did he even know how to cry? It was always Satoko who was crying. So Satoshi never learned how to cry, and he grew up that way. Did you know? People shed sadness from their hearts with tears. Satoshi wasn't even allowed to do that. Even though his heart was filled with sorrow, he couldn't let it out. You insisted he wouldn't leave Satoko-san behind, didn't you? But think, what if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family told him that they'd look after her after his disappearance? What if the Sonozaki family to After Satoshi-kun found out the teddy bear was gone, all he had left were some crumpled bills. The family told him it was just a matter of time before the police got to him. They told him to run away. They said that they'd take care of Satoko. Satoshi-kun didn't feel like seeing his sister. He wandered and found himself at Okinomiya Station. He must have been apologizing to Satoko so many times in his mind. He swore to come back someday. He headed to Nagoya and then to Tokyo. But that meant he's alive. He's alive! Oops. I should be able to see him again someday. He must be coming back, so I'll definitely see him again. I assumed that the Sonozaki family set up some place for him to stay. Satoshi-kun must have gone there. So, he's safe. He's coming back someday, right? Oishi looked up at the ceiling and stretched. He didn't answer me. On June 24th, 1982, Satoshi Hojo went missing. There is a possibility that he ran away, as he was the prime suspect of the murder that happened on the 20th of the same month. Allegedly, someone resembling him was seen at Nagoya Station, embarking on a train headed to Tokyo. But the truth is unknown. No one has seen him since. As a matter of fact, no one even knows if he's still alive. New tips unlocked. Notebook page 34 and 42. And achievement unlocked. Train to nowhere. Let's read the new tips. The information that Satoshi-kun might have headed to Tokyo hasn't been verified. It started as follows. A young man came to the lost and found window looking for his wallet. The station employee asked him to write down his name on the form. Then the young man started writing Hojo as his name, but he stopped in the middle, crumpled the form, and wrote a totally different name on another form. Another station employee witnessed a similar-looking young man rushing into the train headed to Tokyo. The employee from the Lost and Found and the employee who was on the platform talked about the suspicious young man in the locker room. That was all. The wallet of the man named Hojo was never reported as found to the Lost and Found office. At first I thought Oishi's theory that the Sonozaki family banished Satoshi-kun from Hinamizawa and looked after Satoko in return was bogus. But thinking about it now, it doesn't seem too far-fetched. After all, Satoko Hojo started living with Rika Furude after Satoshi-kun's disappearance. Rika Furude isn't just a regular girl. She was the head of the Furude family, one of the three families. The head of the Kimiyoshi family is Rika Furude's guardian. The Sonozaki family probably couldn't step in due to having been officially opposed to the Hojo family, but Satoko Hojo is in the custody of the three families now. Even though the Hojo family was severely ostracized during the dam conflict, Satoko Hojo was now under protection. It seems as though only Satoko was exempted from blame. Why was she spared even though Satoshi-kun wasn't? Let's make a save. What did you just say? This is information from a reliable source. It appears that they found the murderer of Satoshi-kun's aunt. It had been a few weeks since the murder. Satoshi-kun still hadn't been found. I had no new information on his whereabouts. Kasai's report came, as a result, completely out of the blue. Does that mean the police arrested the culprit? It seems that he confessed during his interrogation regarding another case. That sounded strange. If it was Satoshi-kun they arrested, he wouldn't have worded it that way. It sounded as though Satoshi-kun wasn't the culprit. Kasai, who's the culprit? So it wasn't Satoshi-kun? I swallowed those final words. I was convinced that it was Satoshi-kun. The police and Oishi must have thought the same way. The reason Oishi approached me is because he was convinced that Satoshi-kun did it. Don't worry. It doesn't seem like it's Satoshi-kun. I heard it was a lunatic who was aiming to continue the series of mysterious deaths. What? A lunatic? What do you mean? Kasai shrugged. I don't know. Since the investigation is classified as a confidential case, the information I can get is limited. Confidential? Why? To prevent the village from developing a bad reputation. You don't see articles about kidnapping while the police are negotiating with the culprit, do you? It's something similar to that. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen anything about the aunt's murder on TV or in the newspaper. These strange deaths have happened 4 years in a row now, on the day of Watanagashi. There are those who tried to make light of it, and now this lunatic, who confessed to the aunt's murder, said he did it in imitation of the series of mysterious deaths. Kasai didn't know anything else, so instead of probing him further, I reviewed the information myself. I was really shocked to learn all this. I was convinced that Satoshi-kun killed her. I thought that was the reason he had to disappear. But it was actually some lunatic who killed her, and he had no relation to the aunt whatsoever. So Satoshi-kun had nothing to do with the murder? If so, why did he disappear? I couldn't accept that this lunatic had killed the aunt. And what's really strange is the phrase Kasai used, 4 years in a row now. After all, I'd been thinking that this murder happened because Satoshi-kun had been in a dire situation, and had nothing to do with the series of mysterious deaths. I felt as though Satoshi-kun's case had become somebody else's. The series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa is also known as the Curse of Oyoshirosama. Satoshi-kun's case had become one of those mysterious deaths. In other words, Satoshi-kun's case had become a part of Oyushiro-sama's curse. I didn't like the way that sounded, because it was as though the curse had swallowed Satoshi-kun. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to confirm the tip that Satoshi-kun took a train to Tokyo. We don't even know whether or not he's in this prefecture, to be honest. Oishi broke the seal on a new can of instant coffee. I thought you knew his whereabouts already, since you seemed very convinced he was the culprit. You got me. Oishi chuckled and poured a cup of coffee which looked far too hot. You have some good sources. Huh? It's a highly classified case, but you already have this information. I wonder who leaked it. Looks like we need to review our security precautions. Oishi smirked. Seemed he knew why I was here today. I'm one of the Sonozakis, after all, and my ears are open. I smirked back at him. It's all about bluffing. Anyway, since we're friends now, why don't we have a chat? Let me ask you first. Who's this real culprit? I heard that he was a lunatic, but what does that mean? I don't know how to answer that question. I want to know the answer myself. Really, I was convinced Satoshi-kun was the real culprit. It was rather surprising for me, too. Oishi threw himself on the sofa and crossed his hands behind his head. He looked up at the ceiling and smiled wryly. I suddenly received a call from the prefectural police the other day. They said that one of the guys in detention confessed to the murder of the housewife. Who is it? He's a real piece of work who fell into a drug habit. He's been in and out of prison for drug abuse. His statement says that he was interested in the series of mysterious deaths and wanted to imitate them. Are you sure he's the real culprit? I didn't interrogate him myself, but the prefectural police tells me that he has information that only the real culprit would know. He seems to have thrown the murder weapon into the Oji River. They're searching for it right now. If it's found, his statement will be solid. Even if the weapon wasn't found, would the case be closed? Probably. His statement clearly outlines the state of the crime scene and the body. This information, like I said, covers details that only the actual murderer would know. You don't seem quite convinced. Oishi, still looking up at the ceiling, went quiet. As a matter of fact, the moron was already dead by the time I got their call. Dead? You know those spoons that are forked at the tip? They use those at the detention facility. I was told that he swallowed one and choked on it. They couldn't tell if it was a suicide or if it was caused by some mental disorder. I imagined somebody swallowing that spoon and gagged. So the investigation hadn't been done that thoroughly. But although I'm not convinced, my superiors are. I think with that, the case will be closed. Oishi turned his eyes from the ceiling to me. He looked serious. This is just what I personally feel, okay? Don't think, feel. Oops. So please keep it between the two of us. Sporks, yeah, I guess. I believe that this moron is some kind of mistake. It might be either a big misunderstanding caused by a chain of coincidences, or... you know... I have no idea what you're talking about. I still believe that the real culprit is Satoshi Hojo-kun. You sound confident. Unfortunately, we couldn't find anything to prove that he was at the crime scene. We obtained a warrant to search his house after he disappeared, but we still found nothing. But you still believe he did it? Yes. I wonder how you can be so sure even though you don't have any evidence. It's incredible. Is that supposed to be like the hunch of an experienced detective? Yep. It's the hunch of a guy who's been in this business for several decades. That just reminds me of the John Mulaney bit where he's like talking about I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but he was like, imagine murder investigations in like, you know, pre-DNA times, basically. It's like, I can't imagine it. They'd be like, sir, we found the victim's blood all over the wall, and the detective's like, gross, clean it up. Anyway, back to my hunch. But yeah. Where did Satoshi-kun go? His disappearance convinced me that he was the culprit. If he wasn't the culprit, there'd be no real reason for him to disappear. What if the murder actually was done by that copycat and Satoshi-kun's disappearance has nothing to do with it? In other words, what if Satoshi-kun disappeared because the Sonozaki family didn't like my relationship with him, and he has nothing to do with the murder? Was Satoshi-kun a culprit or a victim? The reason for his disappearance had become unclear. I don't think they'd bother to make one person disappear just because of an undesirable relationship. What do you hear from inside the Sonozaki family? Do you know anything? I wouldn't be here if I did. You're right. Oishi laughed out loud while scratching his head. And after he stopped laughing, he leaned over. Alright, how about this? Why don't we make a deal? A gentleman's deal. A deal? On what? On information about Satoshi-kun's disappearance. If you find any information like that, you tell me. And I'll also provide you with information if I find any. Do we have a deal? That's about how it was phrased. That sounds too convenient for you. Oishi chuckled. Shion-san. I think if we leave things as they are, they'll conclude that the moron committed the murder. If that happens, Satoshi-kun's disappearance will be treated as just another runaway minor. They won't search for him as actively as before. But I will continue searching for him. Only I will do it. I believe you're intending to do the same. Our motives are different, though. I just want to know if he's safe, but you'd like to arrest him, wouldn't you? If the murder case was considered solved, Satoshi-kun would be free, regardless of his innocence. I doubt that. Oishi chuckled again, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, let's be friends from now on. The enemy of your enemy is your friend, no? I'm not opposed to the Sonozaki family, though. Oh, really? I apologize, then. This is the way of Kurado Oishi, huh? As Sis and Kasai said, I wouldn't want him as my enemy or my ally because both would be too risky. I probably shouldn't let my guard down in front of this big fat weasel. I sipped on the coffee to fill out the silence, though I wasn't thirsty. Outside the window, I could see normal life taking course. But Satoshi-kun wasn't there. He should have been there, but he wasn't. I was scared that I might grow used to his absence someday. Where was he? I wonder how Satoshi-kun is doing. I hope he's alright. I know you think he might be dead. Don't patronize me. Do you know what people are calling his disappearance in Hinamizawa? Huh? They say that he was demoned away. To be demoned away means the same thing as being spirited away. It's part of the local dialect. He was kidnapped and taken to hell through the bottom of the Onigafuchi swamp? That's ridiculous. Anyway, the series of mysterious deaths has struck for the 4th time. It's too soon, but people are already talking about next year. Are you saying that the murder was a result of Oyashiro-sama's curse? The victim was one of the Hojos, after all. She was involved in the dam conflict, though indirectly. Really, it's not surprising that some people take an interest in the incidents, because they do always happen on the day of Watanagashi. That's ridiculous, too. Oyashiro-sama's curse. Though I said that, I couldn't quite wipe away the fear from my mind. Why did Satoshi-kun disappear? Was it the Sonozaki family? Did he run away from the police? Did he really kill his aunt in the first place? Why did he even disappear? He's on his own. Oyashiro-sama's curse has nothing to do with it. But... That's strange. Satoshi-kun and Oyashiro-sama's curse. Somebody once mentioned those two together before. When did I hear that? Ah, that's right. That rainy day. It was Ryugu who told me that when we were taking shelter in that shack. I remember the creepy story that she told me at that time. Satoshi-kun wants to leave Hinamizawa and run far away. Even if only unconsciously. That's what Ryugu said. Rena had definitely pointed out that Satoshi-kun had wanted to leave Hinamizawa at that time. She also said, everything he's going through is a sign of Oyashiro-sama's curse. She said that for sure. She had definitely mentioned Oyashiro-sama's curse. The series of mysterious deaths has struck 4 times. Was Satoshi-kun being controlled by the curse? Is that why he killed his aunt and was demoned away? Oh, being spirited away, being demoned away? Yes, it's a regional dialect. What region? Hinamizawa. Ha! Well, I'm from, no wait, hang on, what would it be? It would be like, Gifu Prefecture. Gifu Prefecture? Well, I'm from Nagoya, and I've never heard the expression. Oh, no, it's a Hinamizawa expression. I see. No way. That can't be true. Satoshi-kun's smile faded away in my mind. Satoshi-kun disappeared. Not only that, the reason for his disappearance also disappeared. It must have been done by a human being. I can't accept that he was demoned away. I think that's a typo. I moved from one chair to another because the air conditioning was too cold. I moved with my notebook, my pen case with a bunch of keychains, and my cup of milk tea. I did it all in one go. I sat down in a new chair, then opened my notebook again. I scribbled my thoughts and sank into silence. The series of mysterious deaths, dubbed the Curse of Oyoshirosama. I've been viewing each incident as a separate case, even though it was followed by another one. I had never looked at all the cases as part of one big scheme. Good lord, what is happening in there? Oyoshirosama's curse. Oyoshirosama's curse. At this time of year. After I wrote down all the incidents on paper, it became clear to me that all of them served the same... I didn't read that. Shit. Served the same agenda. I wrote down the victims. The first year, the construction site manager. The second year, Satoshi-kun's parents. The third year, the priest. The fourth year, Satoshi-kun's aunt. For the fourth year, one could consider Satoshi-kun himself to be the victim rather than his aunt. If I considered that, each case arose from the grudge over the dam conflict is quite simple. In the first year, the construction manager was killed because he was a symbol of the dam construction itself. Of course, the real enemy was the Ministry of Construction, but it wasn't as clear of a target. That manager, on the other hand, had been aggressively shouting back at the villagers, so he was a more appropriate enemy to attack. If Oyashiro-sama had really cursed someone, it would have been the officials from the ministry. It's apparent that the target was selected based on the villagers' preference. The second year, the accidental death of Satoshi-kun's parents. It's said that they fell from a cliff in some park, but it's doubtful that it was really an accident. His parents were labeled as traitors to the village because they sided with the dam construction, even though they were also from Hinamizawa. The Hojo family was ostracized during the dam conflict in order to prevent further pro-dam activists from rising up. That means that the Hojos were necessary during the conflict to play the role of the traitor. So when the conflict was over, they no longer served any purpose. The construction site manager was a symbol of the external enemy. The Hojos were a symbol of the internal enemy. Those people fell victim to the curse, and it seemed that the grudge over the dam conflict had ended. Yet those incidents were followed by another one. The third year, the leader of one of the three families, the priest Furude, suddenly died of an illness with an unknown cause. His wife drowned herself on the same night. She seemed to have left a note that said she was sacrificing herself to pacify Oyashiro-sama's anger. Whether it was a fatal disease or suicide, their deaths looked suspicious. Mion admitted that the Sonozaki family didn't like the priest's attitude. They didn't like how the priest had been generous toward the pro-dam activists. The priest wasn't quite a traitor, but he was certainly uncooperative. Looking at these incidents, I realized that the curse was performed based on the degree of hostility: enemy, traitor, and dissident. This meant that the curse was actually payment. It was a punishment for the criminals of war. And the fourth year, I didn't understand this case at first, to be honest. At first I believed that this case was separate from the other ones, even though it occurred on the same day. I never thought that there would be any relation to the other three. But when I wrote it down and looked at it objectively, the victim is a relative of a traitor. After enemy, traitor, and dissident, a relative of a traitor doesn't sound too odd. It comes naturally as a fourth target. On the day the villagers worship Oyoshiro-sama, their guardian deity, the criminals of the dam conflict have been punished by the curse. Just like how I was forced to pay at the Sonozaki house, the criminals were made to pay as well. After writing these things out, I started thinking that the fourth incident might be in line with a series of mysterious deaths after all. Whether it was Satoshi-kun or the dopehead, it seemed that they were forced to play the role of a murderer as part of a bigger scenario. Even if Satoshi-kun was the real culprit, even if he killed his aunt because of an ordinary grudge,
The murder seems synchronized with the grand scheme of the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa, which is a payment plan for the war criminals. That murder was the result of his pain, but what if somebody planned that as part of a scenario? For instance, somebody might have suggested to him to kill his aunt on that day, that night, at that place. I had no doubts that Satoshi-kun decided to kill her in order to protect Satoko, but did he really reach that conclusion on his own? Satoshi-kun was optimistic and somewhat detached as far as I know. Would he really have considered murdering his aunt, even if it was to protect his sister? Couldn't it be possible for somebody to have chosen the aunt as the fourth year's murder beforehand? And they used Satoshi-kun? And Satoshi-kun was eliminated because of his connection with them? Looking at it that way, the murder of the first year resembles this case. The main culprit behind that case hasn't been found yet, dead or alive. The other culprits testified that their fight had turned into a slaughter. But wouldn't it be possible that the main culprit had manipulated the situation? What if he had been told to kill someone on that day, at that time, and in that place? I'm certain the first murder resembles Satoshi-kun's case very much. So, did that mean Satoshi-kun was being controlled by somebody else? Oishi had presented me with a hypothesis that the Sonozaki family made Satoshi-kun disappear in order to end my relationship with the murderer. But when I read the notes I wrote down, his disappearance didn't seem too spontaneous. It seemed like part of a bigger plan. Since I'd unexpectedly gotten involved in that plan, I had to be separated from him. Then Satoshi-kun was demoned away, as planned. At first, I also believed that the Sonozaki family made him disappear because they didn't like that I was in love with a member of a family of traitors. But something didn't add up. Something felt strange. I wasn't the reason for his disappearance after all. Even if I never met him in the first place, Satoshi-kun was supposed to kill his aunt in June 1982, and then disappear. At one point I'd been thinking of taking revenge on the hag. I believed that she separated us, but what if my relationship with Satoshi-kun had nothing to do with his disappearance? What would that mean? Who made Satoshi-kun disappear? I need to understand the series of mysterious deaths in order to solve this mystery. What did all these deaths mean? Who was behind them and what purpose did they serve? I wanted to know the purpose, the motive, and who was responsible. Who took Satoshi-kun? I wanted to know if he was still alive. The series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa is also called Ayushirosama's curse. What is that curse? Specifically, what kind of god is Oyoshirosama? What blessings does he bring and what punishments does he dole out? I wrote down my thoughts in the notebook. What's Oyoshirosama? What is he? I scribbled these things down. I was so absorbed by it that I didn't realize somebody had been standing behind me, watching me the whole time. I couldn't stop myself from gasping when I realized that. I'm sorry. Did I startle you? The intelligent-looking woman giggled. No, I was just a bit surprised. Sorry about that. She could have apologized a little better, too, since she'd been watching me from behind. But she just stared at my face instead. Are you Shion Sonozaki-san? You must know Sis since you know my name, but I don't know who you are. Being twins is a pain sometimes. People you've never met before can tell exactly who you are. I'm sorry. The Sonozaki-san I know would never be seen in a library. So I assumed that you were her twin sister. The woman giggled again. Well, you were right. I'm Shion Sonozaki. Nice to meet you. May I ask your name? Oh, I'm sorry. I should have introduced myself first. She seemed to love her own hair because she kept running her fingers through it boastfully. I'm Mio Takano. You can call me Mio, Shion-chan. Nice to meet you, Takano-san. Her condescending attitude bugged me. I hate meeting people like that. I closed my notebook and got ready to leave the desk. Oh? Are you upset? Thank you for your concern. I like to be alone when thinking, so I'm moving to another spot. Excuse me. That's a shame. I thought we'd be good friends. Did you? I don't think so. I finally met someone with the same passion, a fellow researcher of Oyoshirosama's curse. I think it's quite unusual to meet someone like that. She saw my notes. My face reddened. These are just theories. It's all nonsense. Just childish scribbles.
The series of mysterious deaths is also known as Oyushirosama's curse. Though each death is an independent incident, all of them clearly share the same purpose. Each year, someone dies of the curse, and someone else is sacrificed and disappears. What? What are you saying all of a sudden? Boredom project to work on tomorrow, rewrite Steamed Hams to be based on Higurashi. Good. Why the fuck do I have over 9 PMs? Melody, why the fuck why did you send me 16 messages? She said, hi, Bunny, with one N. Then a picture of, I want to say, Ray from Toho. Followed by 13 additional Bunny, with one N. Well then. Someone dies and someone else... What? I was taken aback by her weird spiel, but I realized right away that she'd said something extraordinary. Didn't you notice that the number of victims is always even? Haven't you realized that yet? The number of victims is always even? I was confused, but I tried to figure out what that meant. The damn construction site manager died in the first year. There was only one victim. In the second year, the victims were the parents of Satoshi-kun, so it was 2 people. In the third year, it was the priest, and if her death was also planned, his wife, 2 again. And in this year, the 4th year, Satoshi-kun's aunt died and Satoshi-kun went missing. If Satoshi-kun's disappearance was planned, the number of victims was 2. It's true, except for the first one, the victims always came in an even number, 2. Wait. I had just concluded myself that the first case resembled the 4th one. The main culprit was still missing. He might have been demoned away just like Satoshi-kun. See? Doesn't it make sense now? Takano-san sounded like a teacher who had showed me how to solve a difficult math problem. I wasn't quite convinced, but I couldn't deny what she'd said either. Did it give you enough hints? I really would have enjoyed a conversation with you, but I think you prefer being alone. I'm sorry that I wasn't respectful, Mio-san. Please call me Shion. She seemed content that I changed my attitude. She kept giggling for a while. She didn't seem that reliable. I didn't want to be acquainted with her for too long. But I don't get to talk to people very much, and what she said interested me. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Mio Takano. Call me Mio. Pleased to meet you, Mio-san. I'm Shion Sonozaki, Mion's twin sister. Please call me Shion. I took the hand that Mio-san held out as a sign of reconciliation. Please tell me more. You said that there are always 2 victims? One dies due to the curse and the other one is a sacrifice? Shion-chan, before we get into that, could you tell me why you became interested in this? She leaned over and looked into my eyes. It was kind of uncomfortable. Mio-san, how much do you know about me? I guess you have an idea if you know my name. I don't know much. Just that you recently returned from a boarding school. I see. So I think you can imagine that I want to know about the series of mysterious deaths that happened while I was away. I'm just curious. I see. You're curious, huh? I got the impression that she knew about what happened to Satoshi-kun and me, because she instantly recognized me as Shion, not Mion. I didn't know why I thought that way, as she shouldn't have access to the sources for that. Sources that, for instance, Oishi does. It was just the look in her eyes that made me think that way. Let me ask you a question this time. You called me a fellow researcher of Oyushirosama's curse, didn't you? So why are you researching the curse? You also stated that there's an even number of victims in the mysterious deaths. It's true that Hinamizawa's mysterious deaths are often called Oyushirosama's curse, but why would you delve into the mysterious deaths if you're researching the curse itself? Shion-chan, you're asking too many questions at once. I can't tell what you really want to know. Couldn't say anything in return. Maybe I've been too inquisitive. I'll answer your questions one by one. I'm not just researching the curse, as my subject is much broader than that. I'm researching the history of Onigafuchi village. In plain terms, I'm researching the dark and ancient history of Hinamizawa. Onigafuchi village? Isn't Onigafuchi the bottomless swamp some people believe is connected to hell? And what dark history? I kept asking questions. Mio-san, however, looked pleased to hear them. Onigafuchi village is the old name for Hinamizawa, as it was known back before the Meiji era. About the dark history. You know a little bit about the man-eating demons, I assume. Ah, the man-eating demons, huh? That was a fairy tale told in Hinamizawa. A long time ago, demons came out of the swamp, and while the villagers battled with them, they ended up living peacefully together. The villagers transcended and became a sacred people, having demon blood in their veins. That long-forgotten fairy tale came back to my mind vividly. You know this story because you're a villager, of course. But what about the story of the cannibal banquet? What about the story of the cannibal banquet? Eh? Well, what's that? You know that the villagers had the blood of man-eating demons in their veins, don't you? Yeah, I think I've heard of it. I dodged the question. Hinamizawa used to be a desolate village, but it grew in prominence after the Second World War and expanded its influence to Okinomiya and other areas. The people who disliked and discriminated against the villagers called as man-eating demons. I remember that. The young villagers don't take it seriously, but the older people can get seriously upset about it. They certainly can't take it as a joke. So the term man-eating demons is forbidden. We normally never use it. Even during my rebellious phase, I never spoke those words. Mio-san, however, seemed to have no qualms with saying it out loud. Are you upset? About what? I know people hate that phrase in Hinamizawa. I apologize if I made you feel uncomfortable. The old people wouldn't like it, but I'm fine. Would you continue? Thanks. Okay, so... The ancient villagers had a custom of cannibalism. They ritualized this custom and held various ceremonies based around it. The festival we hold in June isn't just an early summer festival. It used to be a banquet in which the villagers chased after a sacrifice and ate them. They bound the sacrifice to a table, and gutted them, and dumped the organs into a river. Wata can mean cotton, but it also means organs. That's the root of the word watanagashi. Organ drifting. Watanagashi. Indeed. I believe they started using futon mats to cover it all up around the Meiji era, according to my research. They wouldn't be able to do that openly nowadays. Everything Mio-san was talking about sounded startling. I was just taken aback. I couldn't wholly believe it right away. She sensed that from my expression. It's not a hoax. I didn't make any of this up. If you promise not to tell anyone, I can show you my notes on Watanagashi. Mio-san took out a notebook from her bag and flipped through it. She appeared to be doing her research thoroughly. Thank you. I'd love to read it. Sure. I'd like to keep it confidential. But I guess I should share it with my fellow researcher. Mio-san handed me the notebook a bit hesitantly. It looked like it'd take a whole night to finish reading. I saw copies of various documents and quotes in there too. It wasn't just some delusion of hers. You told me that one person dies because of the curse and another person is sacrificed and disappears, right? A person is sacrificed and disappears. Satoshi had gone missing. Did he become a sacrifice? What is a sacrifice anyway? Mio-san looked pleased to hear my questions again. She took out another notebook and handed it to me. I think you'll understand once you read it, but I'll give you a digest version. Oyoshirosama's curse is simply Oyoshirosama's anger. In other words, the curse is caused by Oyoshirosama's anger. Do you follow? Yes. You're saying that Oyashirosama was mad at the people who opposed the village during the dam conflict, and that's why the curse occurred. That's right. Oyashirosama's anger has to be pacified.
If not, something even worse will occur. So all the successive priests at the Huride shrine had to perform a sacrifice every time the curse struck in order to pacify Oyoshirosama. It's called a sacrificial ritual. So each year on the day of Watanagashi, one person dies because of the curse, and another one is sacrificed to pacify Oyushiro-sama's anger? But only one person is actually murdered each time. I've never heard of human sacrifices being made. Naturally, there's no body. The ritual of sacrifice requires the offering be sunk into the Onigapuchi swamp. That swamp is bottomless, and no one would ever surface once they were thrown in there. No body would ever be found, of course. So, one of the victims is always thrown into the swamp every year? Does that mean Satoshi-kun is also at the bottom of that dark green swamp? I don't know. I'm not sure that they really throw them into the swamp. But those who make these incidents happen must be eliminating one person based on that legend. Each year, a traitor to the village dies on the day of Watanagashi because of Oyushiro-sama's curse, and another person is sacrificed in order to pacify Oyushiro-sama's anger. That person's body will never be found because he or she is supposedly thrown into the bottomless swamp. Yes, you get it. A series of mysterious deaths always involves both the curse and the sacrifice. It's a system that allows two traitors to die every year. What I'm telling you now probably isn't sufficient, so it might be hard to grasp. Instead, I want you to take the time to read my notes. You'll see that what I'm telling you isn't far from the truth at all. I heard a man's voice just then. A middle-aged man with a hat was waving at Mio-san from the entrance. Sorry, I think I have to go. I wanted to talk to you more, but I guess we'll have another chance to chat. I'll leave those notes to you. I'm looking forward to hearing your opinions. Mio-san wrapped up the conversation and headed to where the man was waiting for her. She left her old notebooks in my hands. Mio-san waved at me as she left the library with her companion. I took a seat again and opened what she'd given me. What bugged me was the series of mysterious deaths, also known as the Curse of Oyoshirosama. Maybe I'd be able to get closer to the truth by reading these notebooks. If I studied them carefully, I might be able to find out who was really behind the incidents. Why did Satoshi-kun have to disappear? What was he involved in? How did that happen? Maybe Takano's notes would bring me the answer. Research notes, Mio Takano. I started flipping the pages, this time making sure that no one was watching over my shoulder. It was time for the library to close. I had to leave. I bought some food on my way home. I shut my door and locked it right away. Then I heard the door of the neighboring apartment open. Kasai lived next door. Nobody else lived on this floor of the nearly empty apartment building anyway. I clearly heard the door open and close. Kasai must have noticed that I came home and was coming over because he wanted to talk to me. I unlocked the door and shouted out to him. Is that you, Kasai? I'll leave the door unlocked for you. I'm not Kasai-san, Shion. That voice. I twitched. Can I come in? Sure, sis. The door slowly opened. My alter ego, Mion Sonozaki, appeared. She was holding a box of cake, while smiling timidly. Are you going to keep standing there until I escort you? Come in. Sorry, this room doesn't look very cute. It looks comfortable. Sis looked a bit tense when entering my room. It was her first time here. How's life? My new school is as boring as I thought it would be. I usually go, but I skip classes when I don't feel up to it. I couldn't do that when I was going to St. Lucia's. So St. Lucia's was really tough, huh? Heh, you should go there sometime. Sorry. I brought cake. Let's eat. Mion opened the box. I saw 2 cheesecakes there. We have the same taste in food, so we don't have to fight if we get 2 of the same thing. I chatted with her over the cheesecake. I talked to her about school and whatnot. Damn, I want cheesecake now. If you need furniture, tell me. Oh, or just a regular, like, sponge cake would be nice. Haven't had that in a long time. I might be able to get some for you.
I finally got used to this room, but I might move out soon, so furniture won't be necessary. Thanks, though. Dad wants me to come back home. I don't want to live with him, but he sounds desperate. He'd be pleased if you came home. He looked lonely while you were gone. Huh, you can only say that because you don't have to live with him. Come to think of it, this is the first time I talked to Sis since I was allowed to live as Shion Sonozaki. She didn't look like how she was at the Sonozaki house that day. The successor of the Sonozaki family and my twin sister are two different people. The demon lives inside the leader of the Sonozakis. Our bodies are exactly the same, except for the tattoo of a demon on her back. Mion's destiny as the successor was set in stone when she got that tattoo. It's pretty simple. The Mion from that night was different from the Mion before me. When I was forced to tear off my fingernails, I'd momentarily despised her. But if I were the next leader of the family, I'd have done the same. Shion, how are your fingernails? The wounds have closed. I don't bandage them anymore because it looks too conspicuous. But my nails still look ugly, so I don't really like showing them to people. I sneered at her, displaying my incomplete fingernails. Mion grew quiet and looked down. You don't have to apologize. You did what you had to do. You just played the role of the successor. I'm not holding any grudges. I'm sorry. Okay, apology accepted. But, if you apologize one more time, that will be cancelled. I won't forgive you for the rest of my life. What do you mean? Once you start apologizing, you never stop, so I'm cutting you off. Will you really forgive me? About Satoshi-kun as well? My heart ached when she mentioned his name. It felt just like the ache of an old wound. I figured you loved him. No wonder, I shouted it out loud in front of all of you. I'm not embarrassed anymore. Granny truly believes you've atoned. She thinks you've done all you needed to do. So the matter is finished. That's good. My pain won't go to waste then. I wonder where Satoshi-kun disappeared to, though. I started choking when I heard her say that. I just said it to her myself. I'd said that I'd forgiven her completely. But that promise instantly evaporated. Just because of what she said, I felt like I turned into a completely different person. What did you just say, Mion? Did you say, I wonder where Satoshi-kun disappeared to? Who else could know other than you and your folks? What did you say? Where did he go? I felt my eyeballs reddening in anger. It felt as though they were about to pop. I choked on a burning sensation in my throat. Mion's expression rapidly changed. It looked like she noticed the devil's mask on my face. We were one and the same. We could understand each other's thoughts without voicing them. So showing our expression was like unveiling everything in our hearts to the other. Sorry. Even though I told her not to apologize anymore, Mion apologized. I felt like strangling her. I was going to make her confess where she'd hid Satoshi-kun. If she told me she threw him into the Onigafuchi swamp, I'd strangle her to death right then and there. I really don't know what happened to Satoshi-kun. That's a lie. It's true. Granny doesn't know anything either. Please believe me. That's a lie! Are you saying that Ayushirosama's curse demoned him away? There can't be a curse. There can't be! Words kept coming out of my mouth like I was chanting a spell. I wasn't speaking by my own will anymore. It was the demon who was controlling me. The demon that had been sleeping deep inside me woke up and was speaking through my mouth. My hands, I mean the demon's hands, grabbed Mion by the neck. You guys demon Satoshi-kun away! You and the Sonozaki family! Give him back to me! Give him back! My hands slowly but surely squeezed Mion's neck. Mion put her hands onto mine. I looked at her fingers. 3 of the fingernails on her left hand looked as ugly as mine. Mion, what's this? Tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't have to answer. She had the same scars as I did. She atoned as well. The way those wounds were healing looked the same as mine. So did she get these wounds around the same time as I did? It was unfair that only you had to go through that. I felt so bad.
Mion started sobbing. I stood there petrified, still wringing Mion's neck. Since I found out you loved Satoshi-kun, I really wanted you to be happy. Because it's always only you who has to suffer, even though we're twins. It didn't come as a surprise to me that Mion might also have loved Satoshi-kun as I did. We've always liked the same stuff and even the same people. She was stupid enough to feel obligated towards someone like me. I told Granny to leave you and Satoshi-kun alone. I shouted at her. Then she said she'd let you be if you atoned with sincerity. And you did! So you were supposed to live happily with him, but Satoshi-kun has gone away. That's terrible. That's... Mion isn't smart enough to shed crocodile tears. Those tears were real. Her tears dissolved my demon's anger like how the sun melts ice. Believe me, Shion. I really don't know why Satoshi-kun disappeared. Neither Granny nor the Sonozaki family have anything to do with it. Granny forgave you, so she would never do anything to him. Mion, I'm so sorry. Did I hurt you? I took my hands off her neck and held her instead. I'm not hurt. You've been hurt a lot more than me, haven't you? I shouted at the demon inside in my mind. I believed in Mion. I had been convinced it was the Sonozaki family that made Satoshi-kun disappear. But Mion denied it while shedding tears. Between her and me, her tears are more convincing than any words. So I'd believe in her. It absolutely wasn't the Sonozaki family that made him disappear. So, do you really think that Satoshi-kun disappeared because of Oyushirosama's curse? I don't believe in curses, and Mion didn't do it. If it wasn't the curse or the Sonozaki family, who demoned him away? I don't know! I just know it's not Mion! It's not the Sonozaki family because Mion says so! That's stupid, Shion. Are you going to ignore Satoshi-kun's voice? I know! You don't have to remind me, demon! I can hear his voice! I know he's mumbling with an ambivalent expression like he always used to do, even though he knows help won't come. I'll help him no matter what! I'll save him if he is alive! I'll avenge him if he's dead! But Mion didn't do it! You just want to take it out on somebody, it doesn't matter who! But I'm Shion, not a demon! You're only a part of me! Don't try to take control! Fuck off! Don't ever show up again! The demon faded away. My body went limp, and I fell to the floor while holding Mion. Shion, are you alright? I'm alright now. Mion. Why are we two different individuals? Why can't we just be one? Stop it. We've asked ourselves that so many times. But there's no answer. I'm Shion and you're Mion. That's just how it is. I don't care if I'm Mion or Shion. I just want to be one and equal with you. There's nothing we can do. You have the demon on your back. You're destined to become the successor. And we can't change that. I don't want that. I don't need a demon. I don't want it. I'm not a demon. I'm not. I want to be a human like you. Mion is a demon, and Shion is a human. Even though we're twins, there's a difference between us. Was it impossible for humans to live with demons after all? It should be possible, because they did it before. That's the legend of Hinamizawa. Humans and demons lived in harmony together, as Oyoshirosama watched over them. Mion, Shion, Satoshi-kun. Demons, humans. Oyoshirosama's curse, the series of mysterious deaths, Satoshi-kun's disappearance. We fell asleep while holding each other, while holding everything.
Notebook page 50, 64, and 85. Achievement unlocked. Payment. Let's make a save and view the new tips. Notebook page 50. I saw Mio Takano a few times after that. At her core, she was fascinated with the bizarre, and she had an insatiable curiosity that was just as strong. I have to remind myself not to take her story too seriously. Otherwise, I might start believing that Satoshi-kun disappeared because of the curse. She talks about the dark history of Hinamizawa a lot. It's all very interesting. Her theories are based on nothing but conjecture, but some of her intuition covers facts that only members of the Sonozaki family would know. She thinks that Oyushirosama's curse is a continuation of these ancient rituals. In other words, she believes that the curse is performed by religious fanatics. According to her theory, a religious cult once existed in Hinamizawa, and the three families stemmed from it. She believes that they are operating behind the scenes in order to revive the dignity of the Onikafuchi people, which was lost during the Meiji era. Mio-san's theories are far-reaching, and looking at them on a larger scale, they end up making a lot of sense. But they can't offer any explanation for Satoshi-kun's disappearance when using them on a smaller one. Her theories are just too broad. I exchanged information with Oishi every now and then. We'd each expect new leads from each other, but neither of us had any luck. I no longer believed the tip that Satoshi-kun might have headed to Tokyo. It was clearly bogus anyway. Although I can't befriend Oishi, he's been fair about the deal. He alone has been serious about uncovering any new information. Oishi's sources are quite reliable, so whenever I found some dubious tip, I'd check with him to see if it was valid. My meetings with him have diminished in frequency since he's been assigned to new cases. Eventually, we stopped meeting entirely. Oishi stopped investigating, and I reached the limits of my sources of information. People now think that Satoshi-kun's disappearance was a supernatural phenomenon called demoning away. In Hinamizawa, they refer to his disappearance as him having transferred, and nobody will talk about it otherwise. I don't like the way that phrase is used to erase him. During the upheaval surrounding Oyushirosama's curse in 1982, I was pulled this way and that by new leads on Satoshi-kun's disappearance. Every time I found information that looked promising, I kept changing my theories. But that also became an incredible burden on me. It wore me down plenty on its own. The fatigue was harsh, but it also provided a very kind acceptance. Bit by bit, it soothed away the anger, sadness, and doubt that wore me down. I'll never forget Satoshi-kun. I'll never try to forget him and move on. I constantly repeated those to myself in my head. I repeated them to keep my memories of Satoshi-kun from fading too, over and over. For the sake of my fond memories of Satoshi-kun, together with my fear and my sadness, I repeated them forever and ever. And that's where we're going to leave off for today, because it's getting late. I have to be awake in 9 hours. I would like a bit of time to shower and stuff, so... And then, actually try to sleep. Override this. And that'll be all. Thanks for coming along. Don't know when the next one is. There'll probably be one in a week, next Sunday. There might be one earlier, I don't know. I would also like to do a stream of old Cartoon Network, Flash, and Shockwave games at some point. Don't know when that will be. And, of course, as I mentioned in DK, going to be starting Breath of the Fantasy Rock Climbing Adventure stream at some point. So...